Hi, I'm the Space Quest Historian. A quick little update video for you. There have been some developments on the Game Boy Advance side of things that I'm really excited to share with you, and this also gives me an opportunity to rectify some of the grievous misinformation in my last video about Space Quest on the GBA. A quick refresher if you didn't watch that video, there's an interpreter for the Game Boy Advance that lets you play Sierra's AGI games. It's called GBA, and I used it to play through all of Space Quest 1 and 2. I've put a link to my video about this thing, as well as links to my complete playthroughs on my second channel in the video description if you want to check those out. I did make some mistakes in those videos though, and I want to take this opportunity to clarify those and maybe belatedly redeem myself to some extent. First of all, I mentioned in that video that it was impossible to save your game unless you were using an emulator where you could use save states. I should have looked a bit harder into this because it turns out that's actually wrong, and it is indeed possible to save your game even if you're playing on real Game Boy Advance hardware. I don't know why this didn't occur to me at the time, but you can just use this on-screen keyboard to press the escape key, which brings up ye olde AGI menu, and from there you can just save your game as normal. You can also just use the F5 key to save and the F8 key to load. The reason why I was under the mistaken assumption that you couldn't save your game is because I honestly didn't know enough about how the GBA works. I was under the assumption that GBA ROMs were read-only because that's sort of implied when you say ROM. I mean, it stands for read-only memory. And I thought it worked just like a regular Game Boy ROM and that you had to have a battery cartridge in order to save your game. But that's not how the GBA works. To play these games on original GBA hardware, you need to use flashcards, which are rewritable. So anyway, long story short, you can in fact totally save your game with GBA even if you're playing on actual real Game Boy Advance hardware, and that was just an embarrassing mistake on my part, so sorry. Slightly less egregious, but somehow even more embarrassing, is that I made this big stink about how the verb attach was not in the verb list in Space Quest 1 and 2 when it quite clearly is. Whoops, and thank you to the about 10 million people who saw that and left me a comment telling me what a dumbass I am. And lastly, here's the big one, which thankfully does not involve any embarrassment on my part. In my playthrough of Space Quest 1, I found myself having to use the debug mode to teleport out of the Arcada because the game, for some reason, wouldn't let me close the door to the escape pod. Believe it or not, this was not down to incompetence on my part. There is indeed a bug in the GBA interpreter that renders the verb close completely inoperable. And I know this for a fact now because a couple of people on my SQH Discord by the names of Deadcode and CLVX420, goddamn that's hard to say, took it upon themselves to do a bit of a deep dive into the code of this thing to figure out what exactly was going wrong. Since the source code for GBA is open source, Deadcode was able to discover that the reason why close didn't work was because GBA's parser mismatched it with the word closet, which, as you can imagine, produces a pretty fatal flaw because closet door doesn't make a lot of sense. And it actually gets even worse because when it mismatches the word close with closet, it also overwrites the first letter in the next word, meaning you actually end up with the phrase closet or. Now, Deadcode has tried to explain to me how this works, or rather how it doesn't work, numerous times, and I'm afraid I still don't quite fully comprehend it, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know how to explain it. If you want to get deeper into the weeds about this bug, which was also responsible for why I would sometimes get an error message after performing an action that actually worked, there's a long-ass thread on my SQH Discord in the Nerd Central channel about this. Both Deadcode and CLVX420 are in there. You can ask them yourself if you like. The point is, Deadcode managed to fix this bug, which I will remind you has been present in GBA since its release in 2004, and he has posted a fixed version on his GitHub. I've left a link to that in the video description, and remember to check back because he's still doing some work on it, so there will be future updates to it as well. Other things he's managed to fix include some of the verb-noun categorizations that were previously a bit all over the place. Some nouns would appear in the verb list, and he's also managed to fix the bug that made the music sound all fucked up. Let's just dive in. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. It's turning down my audio in the headphones. God damn! So, If you're not on my SQH Discord, then this is the sort of shit you're missing out on. Someone sees one of my dumb videos where I managed to break something that's 20 years old, jumps into my Discord and goes, yeah, I know how to fix that. Shit like that goes on all the time over there, so if you want to get in on this action or just watch it unfold from the sidelines, then guess what? There's an invite link in the description as well. And while you're there, check out my Patreon as well if you want to support me in my endeavor to find more shit to break in the future. Anyway, that's enough babbling from me now. I'm the Space Quest Historian, and until next time, I'll see you around the Chrono Stream or whatever. Bye!